The letter arrived on a cold October morning in 1900. Albert Einstein's hands trembled as he tore open the envelope. Inside, just 3 sentences, polite, clinical, devastating. We regret to inform you that your application for the position of assistant has been declined. We wish you success in your future endeavors. No explanation, no feedback, just rejection. He stood there in his small rented room in Zurich, staring at the paper. Around him, the walls were covered with equations, notebooks scattered across a wooden desk, half-eaten bread on a plate, a violin resting against the wall, his only comfort in the loneliest hours. This was the 4th rejection letter in 6 months. 4 universities, 4 professors. 4 doors slammed in his face. His hands dropped to his sides. The letter fell to the floor like a dead leaf. He was 21 years old, brilliant, hungry, desperate, and completely invisible. Outside, students walked past his window, laughing, talking about their new positions, their bright futures. Einstein watched them through the glass, separated by more than just a window. He picked up the letter, read it again. As if the words might change, they didn't. Let's go back for a moment. Einstein wasn't the quiet genius sitting in libraries lost in thought. That's the myth, the sanitized version. The truth? He was loud, opinionated, difficult, impossible to control. At Zurich Polytechnic, while other students copied professors' notes word for word, Einstein questioned everything. He skipped lectures he found boring. He challenged his instructors openly, sometimes in front of entire classes. His physics professor, Heinrich Weber, once pulled him aside after class. "You're a smart boy, Einstein, but you have one great fault." Einstein looked up, curious, almost hopeful. Maybe this was advice, mentorship. Weber leaned closer. "You never let anyone tell you anything." It wasn't a compliment. The words hung in the air. Einstein's face remained still, but something shifted behind his eyes. A door closing, a lesson learned. Weber saw Einstein as arrogant, disrespectful, a troublemaker who would never succeed in the rigid world of academia. When Einstein graduated in 1900 with decent but not exceptional grades, Weber made a decision. He would make sure Einstein never worked in academia. Not under his watch. Not anywhere Weber had influence. And Weber had a lot of influence. He wrote letters, quiet ones, to colleagues at other universities. "Brilliant mind," he would say, "but utterly unsuitable for academic work. Lacks discipline, lacks respect." And one by one, the doors closed. Einstein applied to universities across Europe, Zurich, Leipzig, Vienna, Göttingen, Bologna. One by one, he was rejected. The letters were polite, professional, but the message was always the same. You don't belong here. Behind closed doors, professors whispered about him. Too independent. Doesn't follow instructions. A Jew with no connections. No family name. No money. They didn't say it to his face, but Einstein felt it. Every rejection carved deeper into something he couldn't name. His pride, maybe, or hope. His father, Hermann, was watching the family business collapse in Milan. Creditors knocking, bills piling up. His mother, Pauline, worried herself sick. They had spent everything on Albert's education, and now nothing, no job, no future, no hope. Einstein tried not to let them see him break. He wrote cheerful letters home, talked about possibilities, opportunities just around the corner. But late at night, alone in his room, the weight crushed him. He would sit by the window, violin in his hands, playing the same melancholy piece over and over. The landlady downstairs would hear it and know. Another rejection had arrived. He had spent years believing he was destined for something great. Now he wondered if he'd been lying to himself all along. Maybe Weber was right. Maybe he was just a difficult boy with delusions of grandeur. Maybe genius wasn't enough. Then came the patent office. Not a university, not a laboratory. A government job in Bern, Switzerland, reviewing patent applications for electrical devices and mechanical inventions. It was humiliating. His classmates were becoming professors, publishing papers, making names for themselves. Marcel Grossmann, his best friend from school, had secured a position at Zurich Polytechnic. Others were working under famous scientists. And Einstein? He was stamping documents. 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, 14 francs per day. He sat at a wooden desk in a gray office on the 3rd floor, surrounded by bureaucrats who talked about pension plans and holiday schedules. They were kind enough, but they didn't understand him. How could they? Einstein said nothing. He smiled politely. He did his work, but inside something was dying or being born. He couldn't tell which. The first few weeks were torture. He felt like a caged animal, a thoroughbred horse pulling a milk cart. Every morning he woke up and thought, "This is my life now." But something strange happened. The work was mindless, repetitive, and that gave his mind space to wander. During lunch breaks, while others ate sandwiches and gossiped, Einstein pulled out scraps of paper. He sketched diagrams. He wrote equations. His co-workers thought he was eccentric but harmless. They had no idea what he was building. At night, after his 8-hour shift, he went home to his tiny apartment. His wife, Mileva, would have dinner waiting. She understood him. She was a physicist, too, one of the few women who had studied at Zurich. She had her own broken dreams. They would eat in comfortable silence. Then Einstein would retreat to his desk and work until dawn. No professors watching over him, no one telling him what to think, no one dismissing his ideas before he'd even finished speaking. For the first time in his life, he was completely free, and in that freedom, something extraordinary began to take shape. Einstein was 26 years old, still working at the patent office, still invisible to the academic world, still nobody. That year, he published 4 papers, not in prestigious journals at first, not with fanfare or university backing, just quietly, one after another, submitted by mail from a patent clerk's desk. The first paper proved the existence of atoms, entities most scientists still doubted were real. The second explained the photoelectric effect, showing that light behaves as both a wave and a particle, work that would later win him the Nobel Prize. The third introduced special relativity, rewriting humanity's understanding of space and time, showing that time itself could slow down, that space could bend. The fourth, E equals mc squared, 3 symbols that would change history. The equation that revealed mass and energy were the same thing. The equation that would eventually unlock the atom. 4 papers in 1 year. From a patent clerk no one had ever heard of. At first, the academic world didn't notice. These were just papers in a German physics journal. Dense, mathematical, strange. Then slowly, quietly, whispers began. In Berlin, Max Planck, one of the greatest physicists alive, received a copy of Einstein's relativity paper from a colleague. "You should read this," the colleague said. "It's unusual." Planck read it that evening. Then he read it again and again. He stood up, walked to his window, stared out at the city below, and whispered to himself, "My God, this changes everything." He wrote to Einstein immediately, a letter of congratulation, of recognition, of disbelief that such work had come from outside the academic system. Einstein received the letter at the patent office. He read it during his lunch break, sitting at his gray desk, surrounded by patent applications. His hand shook slightly. Someone understood. More letters came, from physicists across Europe, some skeptical, some amazed, all asking the same question. Who is this Einstein? By 1909, everything had changed. Universities that had once rejected Einstein were now competing to hire him. Zurich University offered him a position as associate professor, then Prague, then Berlin, the most prestigious physics institution in the world, home to Planck himself. The professors who had dismissed him as arrogant, difficult, unemployable, now they wanted him. Some sent letters, formal, professional, pretending they'd always believed in him, rewriting history in their own minds. Others came in person. One of them was Heinrich Weber. Einstein was in his office at the University of Zurich in 1909 when Weber knocked on the door. The man who had once told him he'd never amount to anything now stood in the doorway, hat in hand, older, grayer, smaller somehow. "Albert," he said quietly, "I wanted to congratulate you. Your work on relativity is remarkable. Truly remarkable." Einstein looked at him. No anger, no bitterness, no triumph, just a long, quiet stare. "Thank you, Professor Weber." That was all he said. Weber shifted uncomfortably. He wanted to say more, to apologize perhaps, to explain that he'd only been trying to prepare Einstein for the real world, that he'd meant well. But the words wouldn't come. Einstein turned back to his papers. The conversation was over. Weber stood there for another moment. Then he left. He never spoke to Einstein again. By 1915, Einstein had developed general relativity, a theory so profound it didn't just describe gravity, it redefined it. Gravity wasn't a force. It was the curvature of space-time itself. The mathematics were so complex that only a handful of people in the world could follow them. In 1919, a solar eclipse proved his predictions correct. Light from distant stars bent around the sun, exactly as Einstein had calculated. Overnight, he became the most famous scientist in the world. Newspapers called him a genius, the new Newton. Kings and presidents wanted to meet him. Universities offered him blank checks. Write your own salary, name your terms. And those 4 professors who rejected him? One by one, they reached out. Some sent letters of congratulations, carefully worded. Others invited him to lecture at their institutions, offering him the very positions they'd once denied. Einstein accepted some invitations, not out of spite, but because the work mattered more than the ego. Still, there were moments. At a conference in 1920, one of the professors who had rejected him decades earlier approached. The man was older now, grayer. His hands trembled slightly. "Herr Einstein," he said, voice shaking, "I must confess I was one of those who did not see your potential. I was wrong, terribly wrong, and I am sorry." Einstein looked at him. For a long moment, he said nothing. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then quietly, "We all make mistakes, Professor. The question is whether we learn from them." The man nodded. His eyes were wet. He extended his hand. Einstein shook it. But as the professor walked away, Einstein's face remained still, unreadable, because the truth was, those rejections had shaped him. They had forced him into isolation, into independence, into a place where he had no choice but to trust his own mind and in that lonely place he had rewritten the universe. Years later, in Princeton, a young doctoral student asked Einstein about those early rejections. "Didn't it hurt?" the student asked. "Didn't you want to prove them wrong?" Einstein smiled, sad, distant. He was an old man now, his hair wild and white, his face lined with decades of thought. "At first, yes, I wanted them to see, to regret, to apologize." He paused, looked out the window at the trees. "But then I realized something. Their rejection freed me. If they had accepted me, I would have spent my life trying to please them, trying to fit into their world, their rules, their way of thinking." He turned back to the student. "Sometimes the greatest gift is being told you don't belong, because then you're free to build something new." The student nodded, but he didn't fully understand. Not yet. Einstein knew that one day he would. In 1955, Albert Einstein died in a hospital in Princeton. By then, he was the most celebrated scientist in history. His name was synonymous with genius itself. But in his final days, lying in that hospital bed, he didn't think about fame or recognition or the professors who had once rejected him. He thought about the equations, the mysteries still unsolved, the unified theory he'd spent 30 years chasing and never found. He asked for his papers, his notes. One more attempt. The nurses brought them. He worked until he couldn't any more. In his final moments, he whispered something in German. The nurse leaning over him didn't understand the language, and then he was gone. The world mourned a genius. But Einstein? He had stopped caring about the world's opinion decades ago. He had learned the hardest lesson of all. The people who reject you don't define you. Your work does, your persistence does, and sometimes the closed doors are the ones that set you free.